Story 1. Just in case hell is real and anyone is listening, I would hate to be surrounded by fools, good food, and coffee. Story 2. Never-ending violent stomach sickness while on an extremely hot and bumpy bus ride, circling through the more scenic rounds of urban hell with a literal damned busload of dry Finnish engineering students. Or rewatching seasons 6 through 8 of Game of Thrones. Hard to decide which would be worse. Story 3. An eternity of listening to auto-tuned pop music. No creativity, just endless noise. Story 4. Sitting in a room full of cool things that do not work. For example, Lego bricks except they are mega blocks or a hoverboard that is out of battery. Story 5. In a tent without doors in the full sun with indestructible mosquitoes. Story 6. Only being able to listen to low-quality autonomous sensory meridian response audio where people whisper very closely into microphones. Story 7. I just discovered it and I am using it currently. Washing baby bottles and pumps. Story 8. It is like Frasia's hell, except it is filled with creepy old toys such as Furbies and Cabbage Patch Kids. I am not wrapped in a cocoon hovering above them. I am just sitting in a chair, paralyzed. Story 9. Honestly, it would not be much different from my life right now. I work in a boring, robotic environment. I come home to an empty house every night. Friends are unavailable because of marriage, children, or work. It is the same routine over and over. Story 10. A coffin that is too small for you to stretch your legs and neck. And spiders. Story 11. An eternity of people speaking very slowly and unclearly while constantly misunderstanding what I am trying to convey. Story 12. An endless drive back home from Las Vegas. Hungover, sleep-deprived, and coming down from various substances. All the while hallucinating slot machine noises and seeing faces in the dimly lit back seat of your friend's car. Story 13. Put me in a room with one person whom I am madly in love with but who hates me, and another person who loves me but whom I hate. Both people also hate each other. Everything in the room is permanently in place, and all the lights are permanently on their brightest setting. Just when I am about to fall asleep, I am jolted awake, and my day starts all over. I am always hungry, but food makes me nauseous, and I always feel like I have to go to the bathroom, but nothing ever comes out. Story 14. Being a vulnerable 2 to 4-year-old child again and seeing dad beat mom, then mom beat me for a very small reason. Story 15. Being forced to listen to people chew with their mouths open forever. Story 16. Watching those I love suffer while being unable to help or ease their pain or mine. I am living it somewhat right now. Story 17. As someone who worked in a bar for a long time, the answer is being sober in a room full of intoxicated people. Story 18. Sitting in an airplane with unpleasant odors and crying infants. Story 19. I'm watching season 2 of that 90s show and having to watch season 3. I really liked season 1, but this is not good. Either that or that feeling when you first wake up. My God, how awful is that? I used to work a terrible retail job at Walgreens, and every time I woke up and realized I had to go to work, it was an unexplainable level of depressing hell. Don't get me wrong, I have a career job now, not that it's much better, but I was just a pharmacy technician. Watching the pharmacists, the pharmacy managers, and the store managers, that's a level of hell just unimaginable. Story 20. I am already suffering through hell, so I do not understand your question. Story 21. Stuck in an elevator where the music is hooked on a feeling, but just the Uga Shaka part. Story 22. Being completely paralyzed, so any type of movement is impossible, but still able to feel everything, including blinking, meaning my eyes would dry out forever while stuck in a bronze bowl. Story 23. Definitely stuck on an island with only hot women who are terrible at survival skills and will not have sex with me. But then they are like, oh my God, he is the only way. Then all these women tear each other apart and I still do not get laid, and they still blame me for their problems because I am a white man. Story 24. That debate repeated endlessly. I cannot stand being lied to. It infuriates and pains me beyond reason. Story 25. Having to spend it with Christy Brinkley would be hell. No, really. It would be. Promise. Story 26. Having to relive the final moments of my daughter's death repeatedly is difficult enough without also having nightmares. Story 27. Stuck on a plane for eternity with a urinary tract infection. Screaming baby on one side. Person who never showers and wants to talk on the other. The small television works but constantly buffers. Person in front has their seat reclined. My seat is stuck in the upright position. The in-flight meals are cold and soggy. Story 28. Having to listen to today's so-called music rattle on all day or Donald Trump speaking continuously. Both are particularly unpleasant and boring. Story 29. Wiping my bottom without it getting any cleaner. I have irritable bowel syndrome and that happens sometimes. It turns a 15-minute bathroom break into an hour or more. Story 30. Christian heaven. Imagine being stuck with those smug people while they all grovel to their narcissistic god forever. Sounds like hell to me. Story 31. Probably being tied up and having a meat slicer circumcise me, then it growing back and being cut again for all eternity. Story 32. The never-ending feeling of hopelessness I had during a severe case of bipolar disorder and depression, which I have now conquered. Story 33. Washing dishes by hand without a television or anything to watch. Story 34. A few years ago, I was in a bunker at midnight with my sidearm loaded and aimed at my head. I was flea-bitten, sunburned, and had just found out my best friend had killed himself. It was the lowest point of my life. I think my personal hell would be languishing in that bunker forever, heartbroken, alone, and choking on dust. Story 35. Obviously, it would be having time to myself to relax, with choices open to watching my favorite films and television shows, maybe getting to watch ones I never got around to, reading, doing some art, snuggling with my grandson when I am not doing anything else. A chance to wander through fallen autumn leaves, go swimming, and listen to my favorite songs. Such hell. Story 36. Having to watch, listen to, or be governed by Donald Trump. Story 37. Other people. Story 38. A 5'1" Benita talking in my ear all day long about something she saw on TikTok. Story 39. Working at my previous job was like living in hell for 2 years. Story 40. The entry point black site blast door, except it lasts for an eternity, close enough to how it is in-game. Story 41. Probably nothing, really. Eternal torment provides entertainment eventually once you are used to it, but if it is nothing, you are going to get bored very quickly and there is nothing you can do about it. Story 42. People telling me stories we both know are lies, but they are going to tell you as if they are real anyway. I would kill them if we were talking about eternity and not a dinner party. So have them respawn as 2 every time I lose it. And make sure I cannot kill myself. Story 43. Hearing Mariah Carey or Celine Dion on repeat was torturous. My sister used to own both. Story 44. Listening to someone eat, especially if they swallow loudly. Story 45. Stuck in a restaurant with a bunch of kids all watching their tablets without headphones, while their parents talk loudly over them. Story 46. 10th grade mathematics class. I was watching the seconds move on the watch. Story 47. Working at IKEA in the children's play area, and every day feels like a holiday. Story 48. My feet are attracted to every corner that exists, so I am constantly stubbing my toes. Story 49. Reliving my middle school years, especially when I was sent to the psychiatric ward many times. Story 50. No dogs ever sat in my college philosophy class with that terrible professor. Worst class ever. Worst teacher ever. Story 51. Nothing. What I mean is being in a world where there are no other people, plants, or animals. Just me and nothing. Nothing to create. Nothing to destroy. Nothing to entertain. Nothing to pass the time. Forever. Nothing would be my personal hell. Story 52. Having only Dr. Pepper to drink, deer meat to eat, and Neil Diamond songs playing repeatedly, I would truly be miserable. Story 53. Being forced to sit through a never-ending PowerPoint presentation. Story 54. A never-ending weekend with my parents. 24/7 Fox News and no alcohol or cell phone signal within miles. Story 55. getting hooked on a great video game and then subjected to severe random lag. Story 56. My personal hell would involve being stuck in a 12-minute alternating loop of extreme horror. For the first 12 minutes, I would sit in an empty room and listen to the sound of two men breaking down the door to enter. The two men would come inside, each wielding a screaming chainsaw, and begin to cut me alive into small portions. Meanwhile, three shackled creatures stand in the doorway, behaving obscenely. When the 12 minutes end, I would suddenly find myself in a new location, waiting to die in another horrifying way during the next 12-minute loop. Story 57. 4-year-old's birthday party with 12 children, 3 clowns, and no alcohol. Story 58. I cannot risk bringing it to life by mentioning it where just anyone can read it. I know that must sound superstitious, but I am not joking about even a chance of it. Story 59. Working at Wells Fargo again is a complete nightmare. I would never recommend it to anyone. Story 60. I actually experienced a slice of it the other day, having a sound-sensitive headache. Does not sound bad, you say? Well, my anxiety goes into overdrive when it is too quiet. Story 61. Being stuck in a room with people who understand why I am in hell but do not understand why they are in hell. Story 62. Having to teach a room full of people like Donald Trump to play the recorder. Story 63. I have to teach violin to a group of children, but they never improve. I have to listen to the constant screeching as I try to teach them. Additionally, all the parents think the children sound wonderful and often complain to me about why the children are not playing in an orchestra or similar ensemble. Story 64. I have to play a tactical shooter on a laptop overheating so badly that it burns my finger when pressing any button, with a mouse randomly disconnecting. Story 65. Sitting in a mechanic's waiting room with only football on the television and only pico de gallo to eat. Story 66. Working in a garden where no matter what you do, all of the plants are about to die. The only music available is mumble rap. Your supervisors want to improve the country. Story 67. Caring for someone I love with dementia. I have already experienced it, so this was easy. Story 68. Stuck behind someone driving 85 kilometers per hour, while I am in my speed-limited truck that cannot go faster than 90 kilometers per hour. I just want to get home, and there is no reason why they cannot be driving at the speed limit. Story 69. Living with the consequences of my actions. Wait, I am not a politician. I guess being stuck at a loud party full of extroverts without any alcohol in sight. Story 70. A cigarette smoker stuck on a 22-hour-long flight whose landing is continuously delayed. Story 71. Having to sit patiently and listen to someone discuss a topic I have no interest in and no way to get a word in edgewise. Story 72. Being surrounded by people chewing with their mouths open. Story 73. Sitting on a bus without headphones, trying to read my book, but the person next to me is speaking very loudly on the phone. Story 74. My children are visiting me, and I am somehow in a dementia haze, vaguely knowing that I do not recognize them as my children. They are visiting me because of something horrible I have done, something I cannot conceive of. They are just there, silent, angry, and ashamed of me. This repeats daily as I feebly lie in a hospital bed, trying to recall who I am, who they are, and why things are this way, feeling only anguish, grief, and total loneliness. Throughout this eternal time, there are little framed photos of all my children as children, with their names neatly written so I can remember who they are. If I just slow my sick mind down and look to my left at the nightstand, maybe I will see them, focus on them, and remember something or just feel a tiny bit soothed. But day after day, I just cannot do that. Every 1,000 years or so, I have a morning of sudden health and recollection. I sit up and remember that I am old, sick, and dying, but my beautiful family will be here, surely as they are every day. I admire their photos and tell an orderly how much she looks like my oldest daughter. The orderly smiles, makes me comfortable, and hurries out to help the next old, sick person. I wait all morning until I fall asleep without seeing my family, unaware that the orderly was just my oldest daughter coming to see me as she does every day. Story 75. being buried alive in a coffin. It is 98 degrees, you can barely breathe. You can taste warmth whenever you inhale. You do not even have saliva to swallow. You are itchy all over as if bitten everywhere by mosquitoes, but the coffin is too small to move. Still feeling the pains of hunger and thirst, without the relief of sleeping or passing out. Just dark, claustrophobic, trapped in one position and unable to move, hot, itchy, dehydrated, and hungry. Story 76. Having to watch Blippi and Caillou on repeat with no way of switching it off. Surrounded by people I dislike. Arc. Story 77. A never-ending migraine with fluorescent lights that will not turn off and people who will not stop talking to me. Story 78. Both my children, 4 months and 2.5 years old, are crying at the same time. It makes me very frustrated. Story 79. I have to go from point A to point B, and the people walk so slowly that I am unable to overtake them. Story 80. Trying to book an appointment on the phone and never getting through despite being told I am the next caller in the queue. Story 81. An eternity of listening to people hum and make random noise. I have a significant sensory issue with humming and general noise. Story 82. Having an itch that will never be fully scratched to satisfy. Story 83. The Greek view of asphodel would be my hell. An eternity of boredom, just floating there with nothing to do, no one to speak to, and no external stimuli. Story 84. Windowless room with life is a highway, playing on repeat. Story 85. Stuck in a room with a group of enthusiastic anime catgirls. That would be such a challenge. I tell you what. Story 86. Most likely my worst memories and moments are being replayed in my head constantly without pause. Story 87. I have my headphones on, and there is a motorbike constantly revving just loud enough that I can catch a few words of whatever I am listening to or watching at full volume, but I cannot hear it clearly. Story 88. You know that moment when you're about to cramp but can catch it before the full cramp occurs? That surge of pain that gradually subsides as you release the tension, preventing the full cramp? My personal hell would be randomly experiencing that surge of pain, but having no control over releasing the tension. Or anything related to cockroaches. The Overlord anime has a scene where people are subjected to a continuous cycle of being eaten alive by cockroaches almost to the point of death and instantly heal to full health points. Rinse and repeat. Story 89. Every time I think I can relax and take a moment to collect my thoughts, someone interrupts me with a problem. It feels like an eternity being interrupted because people have issues I need to solve. Story 90. Doctor's office waiting room with a dead telephone and a television with no video, only audio repeating a bland message. This is the audio options channel. To receive audio in Spanish, please press the language button on your remote control. The message repeats continuously. There is a large spider and a large wasp in the room, though their exact locations are unknown. Story 91. Listening to people chew, swallow, and sip food and drinks in a locked room where sound is amplified. Story 92. I would be in a giant pit filled with cheese-flavored snacks, and the walls of the pit are made of denim. My fingernails will be long but weak, and there are centipedes crawling around the cheese-flavored snacks. The only way to get out of the pit is to climb the denim, but my nails will rip off attempting to do so. Story 93. Being stuck on hold with customer service for a long time, with that awful hold music looping nonstop. Femelle. Story 94. Wherever I am now is pretty close to hell. When you have to wake up daily and figure out a new lie to enslave yourself to in order to not just outright snap. People want to say, be the real you. For some people, that's not a very good idea. Hence, why people become shut-ins. Story 95. I went on a school trip to Rome once, and one of the teachers decided that we had to visit every notable site in the 5 days we were there. So she relentlessly chased us through the entire city. She had a grating voice and was an unpleasant and mean-spirited person in general. Eventually, we went to a museum. I think it was the National Gallery of Ancient Art. The staff handed everybody audio guides, and I was hopeful that we would have the chance to explore at our own pace. Imagine my horror when they gave her, of all people, a microphone. Even the face of the other teacher who was there with us a total sweetheart, fell a little when we realized what was about to happen. There I was, wandering through a museum filled with some of the most beautiful and important pieces of Western art history, with no chance to just take it in and appreciate what I was looking at, because the entire time I had this harpy yelling directly into my ears to keep moving. It didn't help that the whole setup was low quality and did not handle her frequencies well, so the audio kept clipping. Of course, we tried to take the headphones off when she wasn't looking, but you really didn't want to get caught trying that. I specifically remember thinking that this was hell in the moment, and I stand by that. Story 96. Sitting in a hospital exam room, being assured every 45 minutes that the doctor will be right with you. Not my actual personal hell, but I did this for 5 hours today. Story 97. Being in sales means having prospects and opportunities to sell my product with excellent salesmanship, knowledge, and rapport with the prospective client. Having every indication that the customer is going to buy, even the customer saying, "I am going to buy." And then, at the point of closing, having the client say, "No, thank you," and walk away from the sale forever. Story 98. Listening to Oasis, Ed Sheeran, and Lewis Capaldi's most miserable songs on repeat. Story 99. Forever running from a creepy spider that always seems to disappear when I blink. I have recurring nightmares about this, so I am sure it would be a perfect hell for me. Story 100. A group of children repeatedly saying "mummy" and never being able to finish a task. Story 101. Still struggling with chronic pain, relying on opioids as the only painkillers. I have to pay to get them, but I am too much in pain to work. On a side note, I am losing my friends and my girlfriend, and the only available music is from Angeli. Story 102. It's a toss-up between my current job, receiving the news of Final Space's cancellation, and middle school. Story 103. Paralyzed from the neck down, watching someone I dislike ride my horse poorly. The horse is talented, beautifully trained, charming, and trusting of humans. Story 104. I would live in a world where almost every product I buy wears down easily, forcing me to buy more and encounter small inconveniences 50 times a day. Wait. Story 105. Having to sit naked in a crowded cafe in front of dozens of people loudly talking and eating with open mouths, unpleasant music playing, no air conditioning in 50-degree heat, needing to pee but the only toilet is in the middle of the room where everyone can watch. Also, all the food is bland. Story 106. Being in a room full of very attractive women with a high libido. The chafing alone would be unbearable. Story 107. Stuck in a room with the top 20 social media influencers trying their hardest to stay relevant, while British Broadcasting Corporation Radio 1 plays in the background on a loop. Story 108. Being stuck in a freezing cold room with nothing but the smell of cat urine and vomit, and the sounds of everyone I care about in distress with no way to reach or help them. Story 109. I am asked this question by my keeper every night before sleeping. Eternal nightmare fuel that adapts to the moment. Story 110. Having to sit in the same room with judgmental vegans and insufferable social justice activists arguing continuously without any breaks. Story 111. Being in an extremely hot and humid room with nowhere to sit but a concrete floor, watching animals being tortured, and listening to the sound of multiple dogs screaming in pain. Story 112. Baby songs, such as Baby Shark, played at an uncomfortable volume in 90-degree heat, with 80% humidity, while tied down and covered with poison ivy. Story 113. Folding laundry. There is a mountain of it that continues to pile up. Story 114. Dealing with the lack of awareness and hypocrisy of Biden and Harris supporters. Story 115. Trying to get parts for my 22-year-old car, and every part one order is either defective, impossible to find, or the wrong one. A lot like life now. Story 116. Making friends and immediately having it backfire on me repeatedly no matter what I do. I value myself through my relationships with my friends. When I lose friends, it affects me much more than it does others. Constantly losing everyone around me would be worse than death for me. Story 117. Being separated from my former friend with borderline personality disorder repeatedly without any answers was painful. The worst hells are the ones we unfortunately experience. She was 16 at the time and I was 19. Having autism makes me feel like I'm 12 or something. We felt the same. Then her disorder took over and she started hating me. Or I assume she did, since she managed to cut it off before I even got the chance to process things. I won't tell you how beautiful she was, since the perfect words for it haven't been invented yet. After a year, I'm finally free from that hell. But if it were to repeat, I would surely be in hell. It's okay to miss people. Don't let them turn on you and make you forget by telling you to let it go. You need to feel it. The hell for me wasn't that I couldn't let it go. It was the fact that she seemed made for me. She has borderline personality disorder and I have bipolar disorder. It's like a match made in heaven. So I just went through my personal hell. Never again. Never again. Story 118. Just standing in line for thousands of years. Then, when you get to the end of the line, you have to sell your house. Once it sells, back in line. Story 119. Seeing everyone else easily achieve the goals and dreams I share, despite never being able to achieve them myself, no matter how hard I struggled or tried. Story 120. Living with my family again at the age of 13. Life was rough, to say the least. Story 121. An eternal, never-ending homeowners association meeting. Motion to continue the meeting for another 388,393 years? A second. Story 122. I have to live with the Kardashians and listen to Ed Sheeran and rap music for all of eternity, while foolish people nitpick about their clothes and makeup and talk about how single mothers should just work harder and get a third job to make ends meet. Story 123. Oh, I have many examples. I have to complete a task, but my workspace is all messed up by a previous user. No matter how much I try to clean it, it remains messy. For example, I have to cook, but the sink is full of dirty dishes and there are remnants of food all over the kitchen. Or I have to do some woodwork, but tools are scattered everywhere. Dust and wood scraps are all around. Paint is left open, and oil is spilled on the workbench. Or I am at the theater waiting for a movie to start, but the movie never begins. Instead, endless commercials keep playing. I am in a hurry trying to reach a destination on foot. The road is crowded. In front of me, people are either walking as slowly as possible or just standing in the middle of the street chatting. I cannot make my way through the crowd. It is an endless cycle of trying to dodge people and waiting for space to pass. Story 124. A classroom where the teacher repeats the assignment endlessly because of one student who is not listening. That situation makes me very frustrated, honestly. I do understand it can be due to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but the inability to move forward because one person was not paying attention is very difficult. Story 125. Watching my neighbor kiss her dog on the mouth. I mean, you do what you want, but that really freaks me out. Story 126. To be eternally stuck on the Small World ride at Disneyland or Disney World, listening endlessly to "It's a small world after all," until the end of time. Story 127. Probably sitting in a classroom with a clock, unable to move and not being allowed to scribble or move. Story 128. Endless small talk with people I barely know. Just an eternity of awkward conversations, never quite escaping the "how is the weather" phase. Story 129. This is a trick. Do not answer. The devil has entered modern media. Story 130. In a small room, Donald Trump sings all the songs of the Spice Girls repeatedly. Story 131. Being stuck in a white, brightly lit room with Stacy Q's Two of Hearts playing on a loop. In the center of this room is a table set with all the foods that I cannot have because I have celiac disease, and I will be perpetually starving. Story 132. Still stuck inside my head, but this time nobody ever comes. My phone would be on, but it would never ring. There is literally zero interaction from anyone, but always having that bit of hope that maybe someone will reach out, though they never will. Just me constantly running through every last thing that's wrong with me, every bad decision that has led me to that place. Never being able to escape being alone with myself. Story 133. That annoying audio loop of a person laughing like a wheezing asthmatic dog that people insist on using for videos. Story 134. Horrible diarrhea while covered in poison ivy, a cut or anything in or on my eye, a compact disc skipping, and the room is filled with hornets. Story 135. There are several factors happening simultaneously that make it worse. Outwardly, I am always surrounded by people talking to me, the temperature is too hot and humid, and there is an overpowering smell of body odor, sulfur, or vomit, probably changing so I don't become nose blind. Visually, it looks like I am without my glasses. I can tell things are there, but everything is blurry due to astigmatism to the point I cannot make out any detail, and it appears in black and white. I keep my arms and hands wrapped to my body because otherwise, it drives me absolutely mad. Inwardly, I experience chronic back pain, so I cannot find a resting position that is pain-free. I cope much better with sharp, quick pains than with dull, consistent pains. Story 136. Being naked in a room filled with millions of mosquitoes, while a siren blares through a speaker at full volume continuously. Story 137. Stuck in a room while someone vacuums, another dries their hair with a hairdryer, and an appointment in a few hours that keeps getting postponed. Absolute mental paralysis. Story 138. I am taking care of 2 babies. Every time I get one to stop crying, the other one starts. They are constantly soiling their diapers and vomiting. The children's show is playing loudly the whole time. Story 139. Living with my abusive alcoholic parent repeatedly. Story 140. A job where I have to wait for someone else to do everything I need done. I hate relying on other people to do things I can do myself, so it is a special circle of hell for me. Story 141. The key to making a truly hellish place is to give a tiny bit of a break so that you do not grow too accustomed to it all. Just like a good horror, if it is just a compilation of worsening conditions without the occasional oasis of calmness to be robbed by the scary thing, it will be dull. So, my personal experience would be to take care of something enough to form a bond, and slowly or suddenly watch it die no matter what I do because that is hell. This is similar to watching random filler episodes of an anime, with almost no way to know what the main story is. Story 142. Being stuck in a room with any influencer who had appeared on Influencers in the Wild. Story 143. Climbing a Stairmaster, and when I finally get off, I find myself stuck in a busy IKEA. Story 144. Being in a small space while experiencing a panic attack with no one to talk to. Story 145. Trapped with my whole family at home, forced to watch The Lord of the Rings or Howard the Duck. Story 146. Where literally everyone you meet is walking and talking like they are in music television cribs. And get this lamppost works like an actual lamppost. He taps you on the shoulder and playfully gestures for you to come see the cool postbox he installed that actually collects letters. Story 147. Being under a blanket in fall, the temperature feels low when you leave one of your legs outside it, but the blanket is tucked in by a housekeeper. Story 148. Completing an endless risk assessment. Forever. Story 149. Being stuck in a house filled with cats is difficult for me because I have severe allergies. Meanwhile, all my former partners would be lying around, happy as clams, petting the cats. Story 150. Oversensory hell where everyone does everything loudly. Stirring coffee, eating apples, opening potato chips, clicking pens. Could name so many things, but I am freaking out just thinking about it. Story 151. Lying down completely paralyzed over a cold, flat marble table inside a white operating room, being dissected, mutilated, and disemboweled repeatedly, forever. I am forever conscious and sane. The laws of life and death are completely ignored in this space, and I am unable to die or lose consciousness no matter what is done to me and my body. Story 152. Being stuck behind an elderly person, immigrant, or student on the highway, in a parking lot, or on narrow streets is very frustrating. I became upset just typing this. Story 153. Everyone I ever loved told me that they loved another person more. Story 154. An endless city with no other people but me, and every building filled with books that are completely blank. Story 155. One of those work functions for enjoyment that everyone has to attend, and the best part is always going home. Story 156. Seeing my loved one being tortured while I was watching, unable to stop it. Story 157. Reddit is full of the same reposts every day with foreign captions. Story 158. I have to stand outside my window and watch my family live without being part of it, kind of like now. Story 159. Being stuck on a packed peak hour commuter train, standing the whole time while everyone else has unpleasant body odor. A kid is playing rap music loudly on his Bluetooth speaker while another lights a cigarette and harasses and threatens people for money. The onboard announcements are constant, too loud, and repetitive. The train stops frequently because of delays and broken railway infrastructure. This is a typical peak hour experience on the train in Sydney, Australia. Story 160. I have broken bones, dislocated kneecaps, twisted and overextended muscles and ligaments. I have had whooping cough to a severe degree, really bad flu, common stomach bugs, and food poisoning. Nothing will ever compare to gastroenteritis. Imagine vomiting and diarrhea to the point of dehydration and exhaustion, barely being able to get up at all due to extreme fatigue, barely any bowel control, and taking a shower was an exhausting feat, absolute horror. Story 161. Working in retail is like an episode of American Horror Story. Story 162. In a room with a group of people who chew gum loudly with their mouths open. Story 163. Working retail, every customer berates me and complains about things beyond my control. As a server consistently overwhelmed, I am berated and cursed at for anything and everything, often leaving no tip. I woke up married to my ex, KH, a relationship so stressful it caused me to lose hair. I have to listen to Taylor Swift on repeat. Sorry, fans, but I just cannot do it. If I had to choose between her, Baby Shark, and Let It Snow, I would choose Baby Shark or Let It Snow. Story 164. Surrounded by people who chew with their mouths open, dogs barking off in the distance non-stop, and persistent noisy construction at my neighbors. Story 165. My dad tickled my armpit with a hot dog stick for campfires. Not really, it was just a strange dream I had last night. Story 166. In a dusty, hot generic office with flickering fluorescent lights and phones ringing constantly. The walls are faded dusty mauve and graying rose color. No plants, not even plastic ones, and no art on the walls. Muzak plays over blown speakers at a volume low enough that it is impossible to distinguish the song but loud enough to be distracting. The only window is in the cramped, dirty bathroom, which still reeks of chemical cleaners, and it looks out over a too bright treeless Nebraska highway. Nearby is a pig farm, the smell of which permeates the rest of the building. All the other workers are Christian and wear too much fragrance. There is nothing to read but human resources memos and nothing to eat except German food. Story 167. I mean, any personal hell of mine is probably not as bad as the conventional notion of spending eternity in some blazing inferno. But being stuck in a room with alternating show tunes and meaningless radio pop music with no entertainment would probably be agonizing enough for me to rip off my own skin. Story 168. Being stuck in the home where I grew up was toxic and abusive. Story 169. Being late everywhere, I am getting anxious thinking about it. Story 170. Accident and emergency waiting and triage room, and the coffee machine is broken. Bonus points if there is a man with a hacking cough and a woman screaming at the nurses to give her more painkillers. Story 171. Being in a Catholic church attending a 2-hour mass uninterrupted. Story 172. Being trapped in a hot air balloon. I am afraid of heights, and the lack of control and inability to stop or land sounds absolutely awful. Story 173. Being too hot is bad enough for me. Tends to cause stuffiness and makes me feel terrible. Story 174. Trying to help older adults operate new technology. Story 175. Realizing that I made a terrible mistake in believing that there was no hell and coming to believe that the God of the Bible is mean-spirited and not someone I would want to serve. Story 176. Constantly going from train station to train station by either train, bus, or metro, always in a hurry, always too late, always full, packed, and uncomfortable, and always everything in a foreign language I vaguely understand. Grumpy people, and most annoyingly of all, a backpack and 2 suitcases that are too big and too heavy. Story 177. Every year is an American election year. All I see or hear about is American politics and the resulting scandals. It is apparently a very important election year, and the fate of the entire world is allegedly at stake every time. The actual election does not matter because as soon as one of the two evils is chosen, the cycle resets. Regardless, I cannot vote in this election because I am still Canadian. I am the only one who remembers that the cycle resets the day after Election Day. Also, nobody believes me when I say that I am not an American and cannot vote. Instead, they all believe that I am actually voting for the guy who wants to make Soylent Green a reality and just do not want to admit it. Story 178. Getting tickets for bands I want to see, then arriving at the concert only to find some country music band is playing. I am locked in and cannot leave until the concert is finished. Story 179. Vomiting, nausea, overstimulation, social isolation, darkness, cold, hunger. Story 180. Being at a Donald Trump rally, but I am muted so I cannot speak, and everyone thinks I am there to support him. Story 181. Toggling between playing netball with every high school popular girl screaming in my face and doing math exercises I don't understand. Squashed up against the wall by a large and smelly classmate while the teacher walks around the room, checking that I am not copying anyone else's answers. So actually, just an accurate reenactment of high school, but for eternity. Story 182. The last 10 weeks have been very difficult. Dealing with losing my cat and breaking up with the person I thought I would be with forever. I have never experienced this much pain in my entire life, or being stuck forever with this obnoxious coworker. His loud, whiny voice, creepy smile, constant complaining, and terrible jokes. Story 183. You were stuck in a car, listening to National Public Radio in the middle of nowhere, just on repeat. Story 184. I liked the explanation given in What Dreams May Come. You were expecting physical danger? What could it do? Kill you? No, in hell there's real danger. Of losing your mind. A truly personal hell would be spiraling and splitting without end about the mistakes and guilt I feel towards making them. The absolute worst is imagining I am just a head among an endless sea of babbling heads, locked in my own negativity and depression. Story 185. It would be my life right now working in retail with untrained managers. They send passive-aggressive messages non-stop on WhatsApp and micromanage. Story 186. I'm living in it. First, my childhood dream industry is being overwhelmed by greed and job creep. Second, after many dating site flings and stalkers, I found one guy who loves me, but he's too old and lives far away. Third, I still live with my parents, which fills me with dread because I'm disabled. But I'm happy I don't live in a place like Saudi Arabia or something similar. So there's that. Story 187. A condemnation of being surrounded by children screaming and laughing for eternity. Story 188. Stuck in a room where they only play Imagine Dragons 24/7. Story 189. Sitting in a room made of dry sponge material. Feeling my skin crawl from the material with no escape. Story 190. My grandfather lived through Alzheimer's disease, and my grandmother did as well while I did everything I could. Story 191. Oh my God, constantly being behind slow walkers and having to talk to slow talkers. Story 192. The suburbs except I cannot get inside. Imagine having to witness littering, being wary of intrusive cars, smelling cigarette smoke regularly, and having to deal with crowds and noise. I do not like to go outside because every time I do, there is someone doing stupid, disrespectful things, and it drives me nuts. Story 193. Children crying nonstop. I dislike the sound of children crying more than anything. Story 194. Joe Buck and Christopher Collinsworth calling play-by-play of my eternal existence, and only I can hear it. Nightmare fodder right there. Story 195. Endless loop of American pharmaceutical commercials. Control is everything to me. Story 196. Watching all types of pornography for eternity and masturbating, trying to ejaculate but not being able to. Story 197. This is my personal hell. I ended my life at 29 years ago, and have been forced to live a meaningless existence ever since. Story 198. Being stuck in an eternal staff meeting with continuous land acknowledgements and icebreaker activities. Story 199. Customer service is challenging because every single interaction with a customer is awkward. I often mishear them drop something, the electronic funds transfer at point-of-sale machine is slow, and there is silence while we wait. Sometimes they tell a joke that I do not understand. Story 200. The guitar solo from Icky Thump by the White Stripes on repeat at full volume with no breaks. Story 201. My true hell is the promised heaven. Imagine an eternity of perfection. Everything serene, unchanging, and blissful. At first, it sounds like a dream, but soon the lack of challenges, excitement, and imperfections weighs heavily. There is no growth, no fire to ignite passion, no struggle to define triumph. In that stillness, you lose the essence of what makes life meaningful. The absence of chaos is the absence of life. Heaven becomes a cage, and that is the real torment. Eternal stagnation masquerading as peace is true hell for me. Story 202. Trapped in a room where everyone I have to interact with uses confusing slang. Story 203. I am afraid of water. Therefore, I am uncomfortable in any place filled with a large amount of water. Story 204. Stuck in a loop where I said, I love you, to my aunt, telling her I'll be visiting soon, and she'll say she's looking forward to it, and me going on about the day. Then, I get a frantic knock on my door from my sister saying she self-exited. Or maybe it will be a month-long loop starting with me begging my mom to get her some help. I present all the ways they can lessen the rehab and treatment bills, and she laughs at me, saying, who will pay for it? It then jumps to that night when I got the news from my sister. The doctor said her pupils are blown, were the last coherent words I heard before everything just felt cold and numb. Story 205. Being in India with the current ruling government. Am I in hell now? Story 206. Being forced into a meeting about something boring yet easy to solve. The other participants are the 5 people who annoy me the most in the world. I know the solution, and no matter how much I explain, they will never understand. They talk endlessly and are not able to solve the problem. The meeting goes on and on. Story 207. Being in a room with all of my ex-lovers and no alcoholic beverages in sight. Story 208. As an individual with a fear of vomiting, being in a room full of people vomiting around and on me, and then becoming sick myself over and over again. Story 209. Being forced to listen to music I dislike, such as Cardi B, Dance Monkey, TikTok songs, and Taylor Swift. Story 210. Listening to Communication, Donald Trump, or Stephen A. Smith on permanent loop with interjections by Maxine Waters and Sean Hannity. Story 211. Riding a never-ending subway that is moving at a snail's pace while having to use the restroom. Story 212. Just a gray room with nothing to do. I cannot see, hear, or taste. I need something to do. Story 213. Floating in an ocean. It is nighttime. Something keeps bumping my leg endlessly. Story 214. Someone scratching yoga pants and another person filing their nails while I listen to Over and Over Again by Nelly and Tim McGraw on repeat. Story 215. Talking to people forever. I am autistic and struggle with social interactions, and this would be very difficult for me again. Story 216. I think this is hell here and now. I hope something better happens or I am going to be really upset. So being upset is my personal hell. Story 217. Being stuck behind a counter with a long line of people waiting for the manager while they stare at you. Story 218. I am stuck in a space with children, adolescents, and teenagers. Additional difficulty arises if they are all entitled, spoiled, and bratty from gentle parenting. Story 219. To be perpetually stuck in the same loop, to always fail at anything despite seeing success all around me. I just cannot seem to get there. No matter how hard I try, or even if I do not try, I still lose, never learning from my mistakes. I continue to live only to see myself fail again and again. Story 220. The Department of Public Safety or Department of Motor Vehicles, but your number is always skipped and never called. Story 221. Living on an executive housing estate. A fate worse than death for the discerning palate. Story 222. Being stuck in a room with people biting their nails is the sound that bothers me. Or being in a room with people eating with their mouths open. Those two things set me off. Story 223. Having to wear shirts with stiff tags at my waist while wearing underwear with no elastic, short socks that crawl into my shoes, eating large lollipops without a stick, and everything I touch has a lenticular texture. Story 224. If hell were real, I am certain I would be going there just for laughing at all the ultra-dark humor out there. Hell would totally be being surrounded by beautiful women who all want me, being forced to satisfy them all, an endless supply of great beer and good food, and also having my recently passed away dog reunited with me. Yeah, that would be the literal worst thing to be my personal hell if I were to be damned for eternity, especially that last part. Story 225. The last 15 minutes of high school algebra class just before lunch. Story 226. Being stuck in the friend zone with many girls who flirt mercilessly. Story 227. A place so hot where everyone's body odor is maxed out and there is no deodorant, and there is a little whip in the corner with body odor all over it. Story 228. If you engage in premarital sex, you will spend eternity in hell. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.